the Islamic Forum, as well as the Mohamed Amra family, we would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you today. The fact that so many of you have honored our invitation is testimony to the fact that our Marhum Mohamed Amra had touched many lives. And a little later in our program this evening, we will reflect on some of the contributions that he made and the number of projects that he was involved with. Dear friends, elders, brothers and sisters, we will start this program this evening with a recitation of Surah Yasin for the Isal Sawab of Mohamed Amra, as well as all the other Marhumin. Mohamed Bawla will read Surah Yasin, and we can read after him if you so will.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان وهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب عليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينكرون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كما أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها هبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم لهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخسرون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في السور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وظللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العظيم.
I just want to go through the program very briefly for this evening. So we're going to have the first talk by Sheikh Ismail Kanda, who is the resident Imam of this center, that's the Mariam B Islamic Center. He leads us in the Jummah Salah every Friday as well as for the Eid Salah. And he will speak about the importance of knowledge and reading, which will then be followed by a tribute to Muhammad by myself. And then Tazkiyah, Amra will present the project of the Islamic Library, which is the first for Durban. A message by Anisa Musa, Mariam Natalwala, and then a message by Rashad on behalf of the Amra family. We will then close with Dua, Isha, and Supper. It's now my pleasure to call upon Sheikh Ismail Kanda to speak to us about the importance of knowledge and reading.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala nabiyyil kareem. So, I'm not going to give the usual presentation about knowledge and reading. I think everyone here knows it by heart. You know, we talk about Iqra, we talk about Iqra being the first revelation and our religion being founded upon knowledge. I want to just split my presentation into two parts. The first part is, I'm going to very briefly mention one of the things that the late Mohamed Amra and I connected upon when we first met, which is directly related to the project. And then number two, I'm going to talk about our civilizational history and the role of reading and books and libraries in particular in our civilizational history. So, about 10 years ago, I made a commitment to start writing books. I remember it was in 2014 specifically that I sat down and planned out my life vision, and I said I want to dedicate my life to writing books. And when I discussed my life vision with a few people, there were two objections people came up with. Number one, you're not going to make money writing books, right? And number two, nobody reads anymore. Everyone's watching TV. And I noticed a disturbing trend 10 years ago. The disturbing trend was that a lot of our speakers, a lot of our teachers and shuyukh, they stopped writing. Everyone's just making YouTube videos, everyone's now is going into TikTok and shorts, but back then it was just YouTube videos. And I said, this is not our legacy is books. A YouTube video can't transform you the way a book can transform you. We need to keep this legacy of writing alive. So I made a dedication to spend my life writing books. And I didn't know how, I didn't know where the resources would come from, who's going to help me along this journey. I put my tawakkul in Allah and I started writing. A few years into this journey, our beloved Haji Bhai introduced me to the late Mohamed Amra. And I met him, I remember for the first time, Mohamed Amra and I we sat down to talk, and I explained to him my vision to kind of lead people back into writing quality books. You see, one of the arguments people were saying is that nobody reads anymore because books are boring. So I said, let's write books worth reading. Let's start writing books worth reading. And when I met Mohamed Amra, he told me his goal is to revive the culture of reading in South Africa. And immediately, I need to work with this man. Our goals aligned. I wanted to write, he wanted to revive the culture of reading, and together, inshallah, we'll be able to make a difference in the community, and we started working together. So I know that this project of a library, it ties in directly with his vision of reviving the culture of reading in our community. Why is reading so important? It's really hard to explain to a lot of young people why reading is so important. We have a culture of mediocrity. We consume and we let others produce. We let others take the lead. And we just sit and scroll through TikTok and Instagram and YouTube shorts, and we're just consuming what other people are producing. And we wonder why the Ummah is in the state that it is in today. We forget that at one point in our history, or rather for the bulk of our history, the Muslims were the global superpower. For the bulk of our history, in time of the Umayyads, the Abbasids, the Ottomans, we were the global superpower. Not just in terms of military might, but intellectually. The Muslim world produced the greatest thinkers of that era, in every field. Whether it was Al-Khwarizmi who invented algebra, whether it was the great doctors who changed medicine and surgery forever, whether it was the great engineers and architects, and of course all the great scholars of Islam, the scholars of hadith and tafsir and fiqh, Our legacy was one of knowledge. Knowledge that transformed the world that we are still building upon today. So what was the difference between the world back then and the world today? Because how was it in that time Muslims produced the greatest thinkers and intellectuals in the world who transformed the world, and today Muslims just sit back and let everybody else do the work, right? We're just following instead of inventing. I say one of the key differences was the emphasis on knowledge, and particularly the role that libraries played in the Muslim community. If you go back to the time of the King Ma'mun al-Rashid, he opened a personal library of his called Baytul Hikmah, the House of Wisdom. In this library, he gathered manuscripts from all of the civilizations, because every civilization builds upon the civilizations that came before them. And in his civilizational library, there were manuscripts from the Zoroastrians and the Hindus and the Chinese and the Romans and the Greeks, and these were translated into Arabic. And he invited the intellectuals of the community to study these manuscripts. And people would come to his library and they would gather and they would study and they would talk and they would reflect and they would develop their own ideas. And this is where the civilization comes from. This is where the ideas come from. I believe libraries are the birthplace of ideas. They are a place where your mind is transformed. When you are reading a variety of books, each of these books have an impact on your soul. And they allow you to think deeper and deeper. And this is really what our history is all about. When we look, for example, at the great empire of Spain, Al-Andalus, when Muslims lived in Spain, Spain was the most developed land in all of Europe. You know, when you study history, we think 1,000 years ago was the Dark Ages, right? It was the Dark Ages of the rest of Europe. Spain had a thriving civilization built by Muslims. In this civilization, there were thousands of libraries. And in these libraries, there were hundreds of thousands of books. And these books and this library is where knowledge came from. In fact, this is where the West learned their knowledge from. People from other Western countries would learn Arabic and go to Spain to study in the universities and libraries so that they can take that knowledge back to their lands. If you don't believe me, just for example, look at the history of philosophy. Where did Europeans gain philosophy from? From Ibn Rushd. Who was Ibn Rushd? He was a Muslim living in Spain, in Islamic Spain. So our history is tied to libraries. Our history is tied to reading. This is what made us great. And I believe as a community and as an ummah, if we want to be great again, if we want to be world leaders again, we must revive the culture of reading and writing. It begins with our homes. Every home should have a library. It begins with our parenting methods. Every parent should build a habit of reading in their children from a young age. It begins with ourselves. Each and every one of us should have a book list. We should have a goal for each year. We should be reading from the cradle to the grave. We should never stop learning. This is our legacy. This is how we become great again. And so this project, alhamdulillah, contributes to that. And I really hope that this inspires more of us to get involved in producing knowledge and becoming thinkers and not just being consumers. And in doing so, inshallah, we will honor the legacy of the late Mohamed Amra and all those before us who contributed to writing and reading and to the entire culture of knowledge that our civilization is built upon. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Jazakallah, Sheikh Ashraf, for those inspiring words. Sheikh Ismail for those inspiring words. It is now an honor and a privilege for me to pay a tribute to our marhum Mohamed Amra. And the turnout tonight is a testimony to the legacy that Mohamed has left behind. He's touched many hearts. I first met Mohamed in 1979 when I was a second year medical student and I was recruited into the MYM at the Halka in Reservoir Hills by the marhum Suleiman Lokad and Abu Bakr Asmal. And within a few months they invited me to a camp in As-Salam. And at that camp was the first time that I met Mohammed. The first talk was given by Ibrahim Jadwat on the whole concept of Tawheed. And Mohammed spoke about Risala, the concept of following the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and what Risala means to us. And basically it was that camp that changed my life. I had been to many programs before. I had attended many MYM conventions. I've been to overseas student programs as well. But it was that camp that was a turning point in my life. And our bond just grew stronger and stronger. And that year, at the end of the year, I went to the ITP in Cape Town. Mohammed and I and many others, we went by bus from Durban to Cape Town. We spent that bonding time together. There were many other people in the bus as well. But about 4 of us stayed behind after the ITP. To the ITP in Cravenby. ITP stands for Islamic Tarbiyah program. And we came back by train. And we spent 48 hours in the train in one cabin. It was Mohammed, Mahmoud, Ashraf and myself. And there may have been 1 or 2 other people, I can't remember. It was in 1979. We spent 2 days. I remember getting off in Bloemfontein, we had to change stations, and it took us 48 hours to get to Durban. And the following year, we also traveled to East London for the MSA program, because we were involved in both MYM as well as MSA, we were students. And in that MSA program, Sheikh Ahmed Qasim was just released from Robben Island. And Mohammed was there, and it was a very inspiring program. And that's how we all got involved. It was to the inspiration of many of these people. Mohammed was born on the 21st of January, 1957. He grew up in Halal Street, and that's the flat that he grew up in. We used to visit him often there when we were students. He grew up in an extended family. Mahmoud and his siblings and many others grew up together in Halal Street. He went to Orient School. I also went to Orient School, but I didn't know Mohammed at that time. He was a very good student, lived in an extended family, and was accepted to study physiotherapy at the then University of Durban Westville. And I also met him at medical school, because in second year we do anatomy and physiology, and the physiotherapy students do the same. And I got to know him then as well. So this basic bond that we had, medicine as well as MYM and MSA, had lasted for about 40 years, or more than 40 years. Muhammad's first introduction to Islamic work was attending a convention in 1972, and this was the first convention that the MYM had. And the guest speaker was Maulana Fadlur Rahman Ansari, who was from Pakistan. And these were Muhammad's words about that convention, that I literally sat at his feet in absolute awe of his persona, not only inspired by his presence, but also by his inspiring messages and knowledge. I was 15 years old, and this occasion was a turning point in my life. The convention had attracted many students and seniors in the community, notably members of the Arabic Study Circle, who contributed much to the intellectual milieu at the convention. And I remember this convention very clearly. I attended with my father, since he was also involved in the Muslim Youth movement as well as the Arabic Study Circle. And just the persona and the charisma of Maulana Fadlur Rahman Ansari would have inspired anybody. The second convention was the following year, and Ahmad Sakar was the guest speaker. Mohammed only attended for a day, and then attended the 1974 convention during the course of that time. Now you must remember the MYM conventions in those days were not a few hundred people. There were thousands of people. Ahmad Said would bear testimony to that. And there were thousands of people from all over the country converging to As-Salam in buses for the annual convention of the Muslim Youth movement. Mohammed then mentions that a classmate, Umar Musa, later took me to a local MYM branch meeting, and he had been invited by his cousin Nazir Javeri. And I see Nazir somewhere here. Where is Nazir? And he mentions that I attended a few meetings, apprehensive at the prospect of being involved, not having any exposure, experience or peers to offer me support. But I stuck it out, partly due to Nazir Javeri, who was the chairperson of the Durban branch, and Mohammed lived in Carlisle Street, so he was a member of the Durban branch. And in those days, MYM had branches throughout Durban, in fact throughout the country. And Nazir, with his soft, caring personality, created an enabling environment for us. The presence at some meetings of the ever-inspiring Ibrahim Jadwat provided further motivation, and I quickly established new friends in the Muslim youth movement, such as Mahmoud Wada, Rafiq Rohan, as well as many others who were too numerous to mention. At this time, Islam in South Africa was no more than a cultural observance confined to rituals with virtually no impact in society. And he then writes that the most important lesson I learned from that convention was not only to read the Quran, but also to understand the Quran. And this is a copy of Muhammad's Quran, and you can see it's thumbnailed with extensive, copious notes. I remember it was a leather-bound copy of Yusuf Ali. And that's the Quran that we all used to use. That was our standard text. There weren't many translations available 40 or 50 years ago. And Yusuf Ali was the standard text that we used. And he used to write his notes, and he used to thumb from them and studied extensively. And this is a copy of his Quran. And this was actively discouraged in the community at that time. And now it's common that most people accept the fact that we don't only read the Quran, but we also understand it to practice it. Muhammad then mentioned that my journey commenced there and then to read, to study, and live the Quran. I left the convention inspired and motivated to make Islam my way of life. And that was the life of Muhammad. He dedicated his entire life to the cause of Islam, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The most valuable thing that a person can give to Islamic work is your time. And that's what Muhammad gave. He gave his time, and he gave his personality in improving the lives of others, as well as advancing the cause of Islam. And he had a civilizational mentality. He didn't think small, he thought big at a global level. So the idea of joining the MYM had never occurred to me, nor were we invited to join. MYM structures were not in place at that time, and this was the inaugural launch, or the public launch of the MYM. Many people influenced us in the Muslim youth movement, such as Maulana Fazlur Rahman Ansari, Quram Murad, as well as Khurshid Ahmad, who conducted an ITP in Lenasia in 1982. We used to read the works of Sayyid Qutb fi Zilal al-Quran, as well as Milestones, which was a standard textbook in our halakat. We read the works of Hassan al-Banna, and we were also deeply inspired by Dr. Ahmad Tutunji, who was a founder member of the Muslim Students Association of the USA and Canada, as well as the founder member of Forces and many other Islamic organizations, as well as WAMI. And that's where there was a strong link between Dr. Tutunji and Mohamed Amra. Dr. Tutunji worked in more than 100 countries. I've just completed reading his biography, and it's in fact a very inspiring biography which all of us should use. The MYM, and these are Muhammad's words, call on Muslims to read and understand the Quran, and for also greater participation of women in society, which was a neglected aspect in those days. The Muslim youth movement campaigned for Muslim women to have access to masajids, and for spaces to be established for them in all masjids. In this regard, we've to some extent succeeded, and in many instances we have failed. This caused fierce opposition and severe condemnation from the ulama, and they often saw us as the merry-making Muslim youth movement. Again, these are the words of Muhammad. The MYM leadership was, however, unrelenting and persevered, and their sheer commitment and determination led the movement to argue that it needed to struggle against such opposition. And we often quoted Imam Hassan al-Banna, who said, I quote, "The ulama will find your Islam a strange thing and will oppose you, and these still remain our demands." Muhammad was involved in many projects in the Muslim youth movement. An important MYM project was the establishment of libraries, and we started establishing libraries in all the different masajids. The Grey Street was the first one that we established in the Grey Street Mosque. Just to take it back a little bit, prior to that time, the only Islamic library was a library run by the Arabic Study Circle. It was above National Dry Cleaners in Queen Street. It was a fantastic collection of books, and I often used to go there with my father, where we used to have Quranic classes, Arabic classes, and so on. I was a very young boy at that time. Unfortunately, there was a fire, and the library was burnt down, and many important manuscripts and books that were accumulated over a long period of time were destroyed in the fire. However, many of those books were recommissioned, they were bought again, and they had restarted the library. Many of those books were then, when the Arabic Study Circle wind down, and many of them became old, and we shifted our focus to scholarships. The books were then donated to Al-Ansar. Unfortunately, they were not taken care of very well. Many of those books went into a state of disrepair, and some of those books we still have and are part of this library as well. So this is a continuing legacy of the Muslim Youth Movement, of the Arabic Study Circle, as well as the Islamic Forum. It's a continuum of getting people to read and to understand Islam. So one of the first projects was a library at Durban's Bray Street Masjid, and Mohamed Amra was instrumental in establishing this library. It was a major breakthrough, but unfortunately not many other masjids took up this campaign, reflecting a communal apathy towards reading and study of the Quran. Mohamed was also very active in the youth camps, and we used to attend youth camps throughout the year, and at the end of the year, the culmination of all the youth camps was the ITP, or the Islamic Tarbiyah program. Many other projects were initiated by Mohamed, such as Operation Winter Warm, Operation Qurbani. And another aspect which the Muslim Youth Movement tackled was the whole concept of dawah, which was a very neglected aspect at that time, to take Islam particularly to the indigenous population of Durban in particular and South Africa in general. Muslims were encouraged to be involved in local dawah efforts, and within a few years we saw this emerge with masajids appearing in African townships for the first time. Mohamed was quite involved in Kwamashu, in Intuzuma, and was also very instrumental in the establishment of the masjid in Ambasi. Again, these are the words of Mohamed. He said, in Durban, we went to African townships such as Kwamashu and Intuzuma, and we went undercover because in the days of apartheid, we were not allowed to go into the townships, since Indians were not allowed to enter these townships. And we were often led by Marhum Qasim Ntombela, and may Allah have mercy on his soul. I'm sure many of you will remember Qasim, Uncle Qasim. He was very passionate about taking Islam to the Zulu nation. He was very strong about that, and he always told us that he wanted the king of the Zulus to become a Muslim. Of course, those of us who were political activists often frowned upon Qasim Bhai, because he was always very traditional and he wanted to, appease the king. And we knew that, the king was one of the Bantustans which the apartheid government had created. But there was wisdom in what Qasim Ntombela wanted to establish, and Mohamed worked very closely with the late Qasim Ntombela. One of the projects that Mohamed was involved with, and I clearly remember Mahmoud Fauda and Mohamed starting Impress, and Impress stands for Islamic Movement Press. And in those days we were involved in many projects, where we had Impress, we also had Imbrok. Imbrok was the Islamic Movement Broadcasting Corporation, which used to video many of our programs and then distribute them. Mahmoud Fauda and Mohamed Amra started Impress in the back room of our offices in Queen Street, which was the headquarters of the Muslim Youth Movement. They started off with a small little photostyling machine or cyclostyling machine. There were no photocopies in those days, cyclostyling machine. And of course, this was started in 1980 or even before that. It was the printing arm of the Muslim Youth Movement, and it continues until today. It's one of the most successful projects which was launched by the Muslim Youth Movement. And I see Ziad Abdi, who was also instrumental in the success of Impress. And Baitul Hikmah was a continuation of this legacy to print books and to promote knowledge and thought to the community. And today Impress is a multi-million rand commercial project, and a significant profits of Impress is used to fund Islamic activities. One of the things that was a turning point in many of our lives was 1976, the Soweto uprisings, and again this is Mohammed's words. It was a milestone for Dawah, as our call for liberation from apartheid and our philosophy of non-racialism was a strong attraction for young Africans to enter Islam. And Islam spread very rapidly, particularly within Soweto at that time. And this gave centers like As-Salam an opportunity to grow its Dawah training facilities. And As-Salam soon became a bastion for these reverts to further their study of Islam. And As-Salam was our headquarters. That's where we used to have all our programs. We used to go to As-Salam for our camps, for our seminars, as well as the ITP at the end of the year. So this is some of the MYM presidents over the years. Mohamed was also a president, as you can see. a very wide variety of people from different parts of the country became presidents of the Muslim Youth Movement. Mohamed was not only involved in Tarbiyah, he was also involved in many of the projects. The Muslim Youth Movement has a very wide approach to Islamic work. It was a comprehensive approach. We were involved in Islamic economics in a form of Jame, which was unfortunately a failure. We were also instrumental in establishing many professional organizations, such as the Association of Muslim Accountants and Lawyers, the Islamic Medical Association, as well as Al-Qalam, which was a very successful newspaper. And Mohamed was very heavily involved in the formation of these organizations and the promotion of these organizations. He was part of the committee of Al-Qalam, which was also involved in political activism. And as you can see in that picture, it was an Al-Qalam picture with the late Sulaiman Lokat, my father, Faisal Dawji, as well as Paulo Jordan, who was very high up in the hierarchy of the ANC. So it was also political activism. He wasn't just saying read, but he was also active in many struggles, particularly political struggles. You can see Mohamed here demonstrating, and you can see Imtiaz, that's a young version of you. And this was against the war in Libya, when when the imperialist Americans were bombing Libya. Mohamed met Nelson Mandela on his release from Robben Island. And you can see Mohamed attending the first consultative conference of the African National Congress. So he didn't see religion as just confined to a few things, but it was political activism, it was economic activity, it was many of these projects. It was a comprehensive way of life as Mohamed saw it. Yusuf Patel is not the only one that speaks at our meetings. It's also Sheikh Saad. And Mohamed was also very heavily involved in this South Africa Islamic Youth Conference, which was a conglomeration of Muslim organizations throughout Southern Africa. And he attended every of these meetings in Mozambique, in Malawi, in Zambia. And at many of these meetings, the Muslim Youth Movement made contact and had engagements with the African National Congress. He also underwent many overseas. He loved to travel. He was an intrepid traveler. He loved traveling. And one of his early trips was a trip to Iran. And it was just after the 1979 revolution, the Islamic Republic of Iran. They were invited, the Muslim Youth Movement was invited by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards. Many people in this room were also part of that group. I think I'm going to say you were. And they spent 2 months in Iran. And part of that included going to Hajj with the Iranians. They also met Imam Khomeini, and this had a deep influence on us, because remember, this was in the early 70s, which was a very highly charged political environment and atmosphere in South Africa, where we were involved in struggling against apartheid. And the revolution in Iran provided an inspiration to us that yes, we can use Islam as a vehicle for liberation in South Africa. And that's another story that needs to be told. He also went to Riyadh to study Arabic, and he spent, I think, six to 8 months in Riyadh studying Arabic at that time. He was involved in many different camps, IDPs, touched many people, but he always played a leadership. Mohamed was born a leader. He was always our Amir. We were always the followers. We were the foot soldiers in MYM. Mohamed was always in leadership positions. He always took the frontline positions. He always was very articulate in what he wanted to say, and he was also passionate about what he wanted to say. And you can see many of these camps. I'm sure many of you in this room here will find yourself in these photographs at the camps that we had at Assam, as well as many other parts of the country. Mohamed served as president of the Muslim Youth Movement for 4 years, between 1983 and 1987. And again, these are his words. He says that I will forever be indebted to the founders of the MYM for the direction they gave me. I not only found my purpose in life through the MYM, but have, if nothing else, raised a family, and that's a legacy that Mohamed has left behind, whose members clearly understand their role and purpose in life. And family was very important to Mohamed. I'm going to speak about that a little bit later. I gave myself 15 minutes, but I'm going to indulge you all. I'm going to speak for a little bit longer, because I think this is very important that we pay tribute to this very important personality who has touched our lives in many different ways. The ideas and initiatives that the MYM planted in the Muslim community continue to grow, even if their ownership is not in our hands. We pioneered the whole concept of Islamic economics. We failed, but others are succeeding now. You have Islamic finance, you have Islamic investments, Sharia-compliant investments, and so on. So we planted the seeds, and the ownership of many of these projects may not be in our hands, but the Muslim Youth Movement planted the ideas of Islamic finance because we were the first ones to talk about it. Many projects were initiated by the Muslim Youth Movement. As I've mentioned, SANZEF, Islamic Medical Association, Association of Muslim Accountants and Lawyers, Al-Qalam, Islamic Dawah Movement, Islamic Finance. The Muslim Youth Movement had a profound influence on South Africa's Muslim community, not only in influencing the lives of people towards a greater purpose, but also through its members who became leaders of major organizations and contributors to people of South Africa. Many that went to the ranks of the Muslim Youth Movement became prominent politicians, intellectuals, academics, and professionals like myself and many others that are in this room as well. Many of them became heads of departments of academic universities. They passed to the ranks of the Muslim Youth Movement. The main contribution of the Muslim Youth Movement was to see Islam not just as a narrow cultural entity, but as a way of life. And this is what changed the lives of many of us. Unfortunately, after 1994, with the demise of apartheid and the advent of the democratic government, there were many changes within the Muslim Youth Movement. One of the biggest problems that we had was the failure of Jamia, and that has a significant influence on what happened to the Muslim Youth Movement. The leadership of the MYM also moved to Cape Town, where Imam Rashid Umar and Ibrahim Musa, Professor Musa, they became involved. And unfortunately, there were some tensions in that they felt that we were not political enough. And many of us then, basically, I wouldn't say left the Muslim Youth Movement, but we gave the Muslim Youth Movement leadership to others to take forward, and we started focusing and concentrating on other projects. And one of that was the Islamic Forum. The Islamic Forum was a think tank which was started as a continuation of the work of the Muslim Youth Movement. And I'll speak a little bit about the Islamic Forum. The Islamic Forum hosts many guests, as you can see from this picture, Yusuf Islam, Sheikh Hakim Murad, and many others. And Mohamed was quite instrumental in bringing many of these guest speakers to the Islamic Forum. Mohamed was also involved in education, and the Wonder Academy of Excellence, which was formerly known as Wonder Kids. One of the first Montessori preschools in Durban was founded in 1993. It was a primary school which was opened in 2013, and it was dedicated to providing holistic education to children, addressing not only their heads, but their hearts and their hands as well. And they have more than 200 learners in the institution. Another institution that Mohamed founded was the Al-Ihsan Madrasa. Again, education, reading, empowering people. Because he was dissatisfied with the conventional madrasa education, and yet he established this madrasa in the early 1990s, which had a much broader curriculum, and it attempted to teach Islam as a way of life and to inculcate a love for deen. Mohamed also was instrumental in forming WAMI in South Africa. WAMI, we knew, is a global organization. It was founded by people like Dr. Ahmed Tutunji, Kamal Hilbawi, and many others. And then, of course, we needed a chapter in South Africa. WAMI had some sort of involvement, but he formally established WAMI in South Africa in the year 2000. And many of the programs that were initiated in WAMI were as a result of Mohamed's efforts, such as Dawah programs, Arabic courses, Dua training programs, Amlazi Masjid, youth leadership training, as well as camps. And WAMI continues to do the work that Mohamed started, and they're doing very good work indeed. One of the very memorable journeys that I had with Mohamed, it was the only time that I traveled overseas with him, was our trip to Gaza in 2013, exactly 10 or 11 years ago, where a group of 40 of us used the cover of going to run a marathon in Gaza. Mohamed was a very strong runner, was a marathon runner. And we went to run the Gaza Marathon, which was organized by UNRWA, which is the United Nations Refugee Agency. And he was very much part of this trip. But our relationship with Palestine started long ago, as you can see in this picture, and you can't read it very well, that in the 90s, well, in the 70s or 80s, we gave a check to Professor Khurshid Ahmad of 35,000 rand, which was a lot of money at that time, for relief work in Palestine. And this was the first night that we spent in Gaza, Farhad Salibuleh, myself and Mohamed. And we spent about 10 days there, which was a very inspiring trip. And these are some of the pictures from Gaza and the group that we traveled with. At the end of the trip, Mohamed arranged, well, we had to go through the Rafah border. We went to Egypt, and he arranged a meeting with the, at that time, Shaheed Mohamed Morsi was in power in Egypt. So he arranged a meeting with the leadership of the Ikhwan al-Muslimin. And this was a very good meeting that we had, lasting 1 or 2 hours, where we spoke about many issues and how we could, we could collaborate in as far as strengthening the Islamic movement in both these countries, South Africa as well as Egypt. But of course, we know what happened after that, and the rest is history. One of the highlights of our trips in Palestine, and I've never shown this before, and this is the first time that I've actually shown it, was meeting the Al-Qassam brigades. And one evening we went to a restaurant, we had dinner, we were in a bus of 40 people, and we stopped in a very quiet, dark little alley just across the beach from Gaza. And the Al-Qassam brigades were doing the training at that time. We got off, we met them, and they were very pleased to see us. And I hope that this video plays. So this is what they sang to us on that evening.
فإني مضيت لأرض الرباط فهيا امسحي عنك دمع المآقي فما سرت إلا لدحر اليهود فما سرت إلا لدحر اليهود وعذرا أبي قد عشقت الجهاد وديني دعاني لأحمي العبادة فجيش الصليب في البغي تمادى وأبناء ديني أراهم رقود وأبناء ديني أراهم رقود لمن تتركون الأسارى لمن وقد كبلوا في سجون المحان وذاقوا عذاب الأسى والشجان ولم يتركوا من جحيم القيود ولم يتركوا من جحيم القيود ويا إخوتي إن إخوانكم في شتى البقاع ينادونكم فهيا انفروا للوغى ما لكم رضيتم بهذا الخلا والقعود رضيتم بهذا الخلا والقعود ويا زوجتي إن قتلت اصبري فإني شهيد بموت فخري سيغفر ذنبي ألا أبشري فربي غفور رحيم ودود فربي غفور رحيم ودود.
Inshallah. That was very inspiring for us. We know that the Al-Qassam Brigade at the moment is at the vanguard of the struggle in liberating Palestine. And this is a jihad that they're conducting on our behalf, your behalf, my behalf, on the behalf of the entire Ummah. And we make dua that they are victorious in this struggle. And it's either victory or martyrdom. And many of the people that we met that evening are probably shaheed, because we know what has happened to many of the members of Al-Qassam brigades. That was one of the highlights of our meeting when we spent about 10 days in Gaza. One of the other projects that Mohamed was very instrumental in is bringing families together. And in 2000 and, I forget now, when did we start the first convention? 2009. And for 9 years consecutively, we had family conventions at the Ezulweni Berg Resort. And this brought families together, and we got guest speakers to basically address us and to inspire us. And we continued it for 9 years until we established the center. And of course, when we established the center, there was no need for us to have family conventions because we have an Islamic center at which to have regular programs. So these are some of the pictures at our Islamic conventions. And the other thing that we did was run Quranic courses. And I clearly remember this 4-day course that we had over the Easter weekend. And Mohammed was very involved in bringing the guest speaker down was Sheikh Hassan al-Banna. And Maryam and Mohammed went to, I think it was Brazil. And he wasn't supposed to come for this trip. And he got FOMO. He actually cut his trip short. He changed his tickets and made sure that he came, and he attended the last 2 days of this convention, which ran over 4 days. So he was very, very committed and wanted to be part of every program that the Islamic Forum as well as the Muslim Youth Movement conducted. As I mentioned, Mohammed always thought globally. He didn't think locally. Many of us are involved in local communities, in local activities, but Mohammed was a global player. He attended many international meetings, such as the meeting of ISNA, the Muslim Students Association. He went to Turkey for an Islamic conference. He worked closely with the IDB, which is Islamic Development Bank, which is a global organization based in Jeddah. He worked closely with Dr. Ahmad Tutunji, as I've mentioned, who works in more than 100 countries establishing dawah organizations. He was quite involved in doing a situational analysis in Africa, and he was doing this on behalf of the IDP. He interacted with many scholars, and he had very strong links with the Muslim Brotherhood. And in fact, when he returned to the mercy of Allah, there was a message from the Muslim Brotherhood basically acknowledging his loss and making dua for his forgiveness. We hosted many Islamic scholars from overseas, from Sudan. This is the Grand Mufti of Bosnia, Muhammad Faris, who did a book tour from the Muslim Productive Institute, Sheikh from Seekers, Sheikh Rabbani from the Seekers Hub, as well as Sheikh Rashid al-Ghanouchi, who is the leader of the Al-Nahda movement in Tunisia, who is in prison at the moment, put in prison by the dictator in Tunisia. So these were many of the people that we interacted with, and Mohammed was one of the forces, because he was involved globally. He had interaction with many of these scholars, and he brought them to the shores of South Africa to interact with us. Another program that Mohammed was very passionate about was education, and he was able to IDP scholarships, and many hundreds of students were able to benefit from the scholarships. A major project of Mohammed was the establishment of Baitul Hikmah, which is a bookshop that's situated at the center. It also organized many tours by scholars as well as authors. It's a unique bookshop. There is no bookshop like this in South Africa, which has books on a variety of Islamic topics from many different parts of the world. And I can't think of any bookshop that has the quality and the variety of books that Baitul Hikmah has. And again, it was part of his culture of encouraging people to read and to think and to publish. It is a civilizational goal that Mohammed had. As I said, he thought globally, he didn't think locally. So in summary, this is some of the involvements of Mohammed. He was involved in the Wonder Academy, the Muslim Youth Movement, the Islamic Forum, WAMI, IDB, Impress. He was also established SAMNet. And again, he handed it over when he felt there was a need to hand over SAMNet. He was instrumental in Vision 2020. And in the last few years before he passed away, he was busy setting up a waqf for a significant amount of money with IDB to invest that money locally, buy properties and so on, so that we can generate an income to do the dawah work that we want to do in this country. He lived life to the full. As I said, he loved to travel. He's been to most parts of the world. Most of the time he went with his family, and he was also a very good marathon runner, something that I have in common with him. We ran many marathons together. He had completed the Two Oceans Marathon. I don't think he completed Comrades, but I often used to see him running on Sunday morning at the beach, and we would often stop, have a chat, and sometimes even run together. He lived life to the full. And in his short life of 63 years, he was involved in Islamic activities, in sports, in community upliftment, as well as establishing many projects to uplift the community. Mohammed's greatest legacy is his family. He lost his father at a very young age, and I clearly remember we were at an ITP, and it was in As-Salam, and we got news of the return of his father to the mercy of Allah. And he handled it with so much of patience. We were all around him. We comforted him. We all suspended the program for a while. We came for the janazah and went back. Mohammed then took meticulous care of his mother and his auntie as well. And this is something that is admirable about him, that in spite of being involved in the community, he had time for his family, and his family was the most important for him. He leaves behind a legacy, and his greatest legacy is his family. Mariam, Rashad, Taskiya, Abdul Qadir, as well as Sajid. Every single one a gem in their own right, who have continued the legacy that Muhammad has started. And we make dua that Allah gives them the strength and the ability to continue this legacy. It is a legacy that very few of us can boast of, where every single child of theirs is involved in some type of community upliftment and community building. And this is the legacy that Muhammad leaves behind for us. And it is a legacy that we should all try and emulate. Incidentally, today is exactly 3 years that Muhammad has returned to the mercy of Allah. He passed away on the 24th of August 2001. And we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants him the highest stages of Jannah. And He accepts all our duas for him. And He accepts all that He has done for us. He has touched us in many different ways. He was always there for our children, my children included. Every single of my child has been through his camps. When the Muslim Youth Movement was not conducting camps, he privately conducted camps. He took them to shooting ranges. He took them to paintballing, just to create this social adhesiveness. And we are all indebted to Muhammad in some way or the other. He has touched us in many different ways. And may Allah bless him and grant him the highest stages of Jannah. I'd like to acknowledge Brother Yusuf Hotel for sharing some of these ideas, to the Amra family, in particular Taskiya and Rashad, for their contribution to this slideshow. May Allah bless you and reward you for all that you have done. And may Allah grant you sabr to accept the loss of Muhammad. And inshallah you will continue with his legacy. And we are all there to continue this legacy with you. We will hold your hands and continue with the legacy that Muhammad has started, inshallah. Allahu Akbar. The next part of the program is a talk by, let me see. Taskiya, who will introduce the library and the library concept. Again, this was, Muhammad was very passionate about books and reading, and when we met he always spoke about, have you read this book? I think you should read this book. It was not just he wanted to make sales for Baitul Hikmah, but he really wanted us to read. And he always encouraged us to read. And Taskiya has continued with the legacy of Muhammad in continuing the project of Baitul Hikmah. Many times when children lose their parents, that legacy is lost. But alhamdulillah, Taskiya has managed to continue that legacy, and the bookshop has grown from strength to strength. We now move on to the next step of our project, which is the establishment of the Islamic Library, which is the only of its kind in Durban that I know of. And if there are any others, please let us know. This is a collaborative effort between the Islamic Forum as well as Muhammad's family, and we have worked together in trying to establish this library. We've still got a long way to go. One of the things we really need is funding to buy more books and to make it more accessible to people. So please, those of you that want to contribute to the library, there is a collection box out there. We'll get the banking details from Taskiya, myself, or Mohamed Wada, and try and contribute generously to this very important project. And I think the Islamic Library is one of the pivotal projects of the Islamic Forum. So Taskiya will give us a presentation of the Islamic Library and where we are and where we're heading to.
Other way. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. When I asked Uncle Ahmed if I could swap, I didn't know what I was swapping after so much. I didn't think about it too much. He was actually supposed to speak after me. But anyway, alhamdulillah, it's really overwhelming to see so many people here. And it's been many months of work for us to get to this point where we can actually launch the library. The infrastructure of the library was completed last year, and at the beginning of this year, we're like, yeah, we need to start setting up the library, alhamdulillah. It's taken us 8 months to get there with lots of work, and it's definitely a project that's bigger than we thought it was going to be. So I'm really here to talk logistics. As most of you know, I'm really a person of very few words. So I'm sure you can understand from Uncle Ahmed's presentation why a library was a fitting tribute to my father. We didn't actually discuss it too much. Someone just brought up the idea and then it was settled. It was like, almost like it was so natural that this was something that we would do. So alhamdulillah, it is a continuation of his legacy, and I'm really happy that so many of you are here to celebrate this journey of opening a library with us, and that means that so many of you share that vision and will share in that legacy, alhamdulillah. So we are almost done with the library. We have maybe a week more of work to do. Initially, we thought we were going to set up the library based on volunteers, so we started to meet on Saturdays and Sundays with a group of friends. So that was my first volunteer sitting over here. And she motivated me and kept me on track. So we would meet on the weekends and do some cataloging, do some covering, and then we realized, wow, this is a really a mammoth task, and cataloging over 3,000 books is really something bigger than we thought it would be. And so then a couple of months later, we had Tasneem join us, and Tasneem has been working for 3 months on the library project. Again, when Tasneem joined us, I thought she was going to be working for 6 weeks, and that's what she signed up for. Alhamdulillah, she bared with me and carried on for the whole 3 months, and now we are almost done. I am deeply grateful to all of you who've helped with the library project, the entire Islamic Forum team, from the very idea to the support that you've given, Uncle Yusuf, our architect, all of our incredible volunteers, some of them are here today, Soda, Auntie Zuleika, who is incredibly committed and incredibly passionate, and she was here every weekend. She was like, you let me know when you're available and come pick me up, and she was always here. And honestly, I would have worked for like 3 hours on a Saturday, but she made sure we worked for 8 hours. A special thanks to Uncle Tulani, we traveled him a lot, Uncle Faiza, Haji Bai, Tubasin. There's so many people to thank, and I probably missed out quite a few people, but Jazakallah khair to all of you. People also donated financially, especially towards the startup costs of like the physical infrastructure. Jazakallah khair, may it be a sadaqah jariyah, not just for my father, but for everyone who was involved and contributed in any way. So now moving to the real logistics. I think many of you want to know when you can sign up. You can sign up to be a member of the library from the 2nd of September, inshallah. We have over 3,000 books in the library. Over 600 of those books are for children. We have subjects like history and spirituality, Sharia, sciences, fiqh. We try to have a diverse collection of books. Many of the books are from my father's collection, not his very old books, but from the last 10 years, so pretty new books. I would say 2/3 of the library is his collection. Some were purchased, some were donated by others. Jazakallah khair again for everyone who donated. And then we have the reserve section, and many of those books in the reserve section are actually from the Arabic Study Circle library. Many are out of print, so please do check them out and appreciate them. They have nice gold spines and nicely bound books. So I think about 300 books are from the Arabic Study Circle. And then you have heard that we're trying to increase our collection of books. So many books are available in South Africa, alhamdulillah, with Baitul Hikmah and lots of other Islamic bookstores in the country. Books have become a lot more accessible, but there are still books that we struggle to find. And I'm hoping that through contributions and through the library, we'll be able to acquire at least one of each of these books to make it accessible to our community. So I estimate that my wish list is about 30,000 rand, and I'm hoping some of you will contribute to that. We have a card machine for a box. So please, if you can. We want the best for our community. We want the best for our children. I look at my high school shelf there and I'm like, yeah, it's still a bit small. I'm hoping to grow this and to be able to provide the best books for everyone who's interested in a variety of subjects related to Islam. So inshallah, we will get there. And I think being a library, it's a growing project. It's a project that will evolve over time. We're hoping that the library will not just be a place to house books. It will be a place where we gather as a community, a place where we inspire each other, where we come upon new ideas, you know. As Sheikh Ismail Kamda spoke earlier about libraries being spaces of like generating ideas or cultivating minds, cultivating hearts, and most importantly, cultivating community and growing community. So inshallah, this humble effort will be all of that. May Allah accept all of our efforts. May it be a means of us seeking His noble countenance. And may it be a sadaqah jariyah for my father. I know often when people ask me how's life, and I'm like, yeah, I just do admin. And I know why I do this admin, it's because when my father was alive, I didn't really serve him. He was always serving me. Now it's my time to serve. So inshallah, Allah accept this as my service to him as well. Because really my father did everything for me. I was just, even as a 20-year-old and a 30-year-old, he was still serving me. So may Allah accept this as my service to him and my khidmah for him. He was also very independent, so he didn't need me. Now he needs me, he's passing. So that is all I have to say. If you have any questions, let me know. Mostly you contribute books, or money towards books. I'm going to hand over now to a friend of my father who I only actually met after his passing. That is Auntie Maryam Natalwala. She is a visionary and a librarian par excellence. I love listening to her, I love chatting to her. Her day job is actually to set up libraries and to advocate for reading and growing and books. So it's really an honor to have you, and I'm so glad that you accepted my invitation. Auntie Maryam only confirmed today that she was going to speak. So I hand over to Auntie Maryam. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Let me start with a cliche. Indeed, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here, and I really mean it from my heart. Having met late Mr. Mohamed Amra, my association did not only go back to MYM as a student of literature that many years ago, but I had studied with late Riaz Jamal and Idris Khamisa, and years down the line, we were always in touch, but there is the formidable leader in the name of late Mr. Mohamed Amra. When I met him, immediately it was very easy, and thanks to brother Haji Bhai, who had come into my office to make some books for the library, and that was the beginning of a wonderful journey of sharing information, discussing Islam, and incorporating Islamic books within eThekwini municipal libraries, of which there were 106, and to purchase competitively with the kind of literature that was being purchased was by itself a magnanimous task. And then I had the privilege of meeting Mr. Mohamed Amra, and we never looked back. an Islamic library was something that we spoke about quite naturally. Because I had said to him, there is everything, there is a lot of money in our midst, but I don't see an Islamic library. And forget about the rest of South Africa, at least in KZN, we required to have it. And am I not immensely pleased to be here today, not only to mark a tribute to a man with great strength, of great worship and service, a man with a vision and a mission to have entered the portals next door with a beautiful library. Small though it may be, it has to start there, and it will grow because he shared his vision with me, and I'm hoping that he will contribute. I know our one meeting may have been very little, but I do hope that I had the opportunity to inject some, if not all, of what we see here in the library. And to dear Taskia, who has the wonderful and the magnanimous task of taking on leading a young leader, you're not alone. And at this point I would unhesitatingly say that yes, there are books, there are Islamic books, and I've seen it, and I had the privilege of seeing every single book that came in, one of which was set aside for the library and one for Baitul Hikmah, because whenever he purchased books and brought them, Mariam, come over, you've got to see it, you've got to see this, and I think we spent more time looking at the books and speaking about this day. So I would say I've listened to Sheikh Kamdar and to Dr. Ahmed Manjra. You have a task, sir, to write a book which is going to speak about the vision and the mission. You may contribute chapters, and there are many others, Mr. Yusuf Patel and many others who would be contributing to that. It would be something that if you undertake, it's going to be a wonderful contribution to the library as well. But yes, we have books and we have non-books. And then you're going to hear the librarians speak, because the world is, we are so blessed that we are commanded to read by none other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, the kind of censorship that we adopted, and me particularly, within the portals of the eThekwini libraries may not be necessary here by virtue of our commandments and our intellectual and spiritual inclinations that would get imbibed in the manner in which we acquire our collections. And I know that once again we have social media in our lives, because many years ago we were competing with television, and that's not enough. And here is Facebook and Instagram and X and you name it, much more. So we have digital competition as well, and that's okay, because people are meant to read, and we do want to read them the real book. The comfort of having a book in your hands is kind of irreplaceable, but I am broad-minded and open enough to understand that a Kindle can give you hundreds and hundreds of books as well, and that's okay if you're reading. But for me, what is important is halal reading. There is plenty of that. May we pause the azans? Allah's blessings comes in various forms. A beautiful juncture with an azan right in the middle of it. I pray that we made lots of dua for this soul who we celebrate today and whose strength and mercy also get accepted for Tazkiyah, her brother, my namesake, Maryam, and your little brothers as well. So I was just mentioning the great big digital divide that's in our midst. And yes, there is a digital divide because not everybody is there. Some of us are there, and we've got to make great strides in this. But books have a place in that world. There are some who genuinely cannot read, and that's okay. They can hear. Audible books are there. There are those who do not read, and we've got Braille books for them. That too. So when there are limitations and there are times when there are insufficiencies in life, there are books available to meet those needs and bridge those gaps. Apart from, I know you've got toys in the bookshop and toys library as well. That's important too. So I was emphasizing the need. I know that we're going to acquire a lot of books, and it's wonderful to know that 300 books from the Arabic Studies Circle are incorporated here, and many others, and I hope your late dad's collection also finds its home here, because I've known of the kind of literature that he's had. You know, I'm going to skim through a lot because the kind of discussion that we're having and the kind of information that has already come from Dr. Majra is great. There is already a huge book that is in there. So I think what we require to be cautious about is what we acquire, even if it is fiction, even if it's essays. So halal reading and halal writing, because everybody's writing today. People are writing, doing e-books, and not everything is acceptable. It's a very mild way of me getting across that. I've come across lots of award-winning books. In my humble opinion, they don't deserve an award because they ruin your root and your spirit. So we've got to do encourage writing, do encourage reading, and we do know that that is soul food. We have choices, we have options, and we are required to exercise them accordingly. And therefore, the acquisition of the collection and encouraging writing seminars and reading seminars and lectures, such as the kind that we've had from our two brothers, is going to be very important henceforth. Let it be incorporated in this Islamic library. So, you know, in the Quran Sharif, it is said, so woe to them for what their hands have written, and woe to them for what they earn. And that we know is significantly important. That is why we are so blessed and we are so prosperous in having born into Islam that there is a chapter on the kalam as well, the pen. The power of the word and the power of the pen does not replace anything. There are very many ideas that I would like to share, but maybe this is not the forum for it. And we will speak about it and gently, you know, move in that direction. But suffice to say that we are here, all of us, because there is a deep understanding, a deep respect for what is happening today in Durban and in KwaZulu-Natal. It is a landmark. It is an achievement it is a dream that has been fulfilled. May I then request your du'as, your prosperity, your strength, and all of us into handing not only monies but good thoughts, books that you may come across. Let us get the culture of bequeathing collections. A lot of collections get dispersed when elders pass on. There are gems that are in there. And I've had the collection of one of them that passed away, a prolific reader, an advocate. And I've got those 700 books there, apart from the professional literature, which was given to his protege. Similarly, I speak about it here because it's essential that we encourage the contribution to an Islamic library. Dear brothers and sisters, I could elaborate a lot more. Please allow me to stop here. I have, indeed, just to say, may this library grow with great prosperity and with a lot of blessings.
Almost at the end of the program. I know many of you are hungry and supper is ready, but I'm going to now ask Sister Anisa Musa, who was closely associated with us in the Muslim Youth Movement as well as the Islamic Forum, to say a few words.
Thank you everyone for this opportunity. I don't know if you can hear me. COVID deprived us of many things, and mourning together was one of them. So after Mohamed passed, I wrote this, and I thought I'd just share it with you. He knew so many people knew him. Can you hear? Across the country, across the world, he made connections, nurtured relationships, and managed to get something out of it. Something out of it not for himself necessarily, but for the public good, for the Ummah. I got to know Mohamed Amra through my involvement in the MYM and MSA in my university years. I probably met or shared the same space with Mohamed when I attended my first camp, or possibly at the MYM offices in Queen Street. He got to know me because I got engaged to Ashraf, and then married to Ashraf, who was a fellow Muslim youth activist, and they just crossed the country together. And I think he was one of the first people to tell me the tea or coffee for me, please, I'll have a glass of milk story. And he was always really amused that there was this, that everyone would find it perplexing that when they went anywhere, that Ashraf would request a glass of milk and he wasn't going to have tea and coffee. And he always found that story really amusing. And they had many interesting anecdotes and shared many interesting experiences together. And Ashraf talks about that trip from Cape Town. I recall meeting Mariam in their flat in Sheringham Road, I think at that time, I think it was around 1986. And I was introduced to the movement, first through the MYM, MSA camp activities, and then through marriage, and I got to know this whole group of people, these families with their own unique rituals and practices, and Mohamed and Mariam were a big part of that. I learned new songs. We prayed as families. Women prayed in Jamaat behind the men with no barrier. Women were encouraged to participate, and there was always some program or camp or meeting or action. And Mohamed was so many things. You've all heard, he was a natural leader. He was a deep thinker, a passionate activist, a comrade. But most of all, he was a doer. He made things happen. He got things done. He was a hands-on type of person. He could talk and he could network, but he also put in the labor. He was also good with his hands. I think one of my first memories of him was of him fixing some plumbing issue at Asalam. And he was always thinking ahead, planning the next project. He wrote in people, he called on his networks, he persuaded, and he did the legwork. He made a lot happen. And he was one of the number of amazing people, all similarly committed and talented, together that achieved a lot. I don't know if it's even possible to document all the things he was a part of, and thanks for reminding us of so many things that he was a part of. And his vision encompassed many things, and his legacy is just as large and just as complex. Actually, it's towering. And you know, this arose from his deep commitment to his community, a sincere and genuine love of Islam and his creator, an authentic realization that this life is short, a wholehearted commitment to hard work. I don't know too many other people with that level of dedication. I think of a true community worker. If I think of a true community worker, he is one of the first people that springs to mind. And he was also, as you've heard, that the cause and the work never took him away from his commitment and service to his family. He was a committed and enthusiastic partner and father, as well as a community worker. And his children may just have been one of his projects. And what he hoped to achieve with Muslim youth, I think he has achieved through his children. Alhamdulillah, that is a monumental tribute to his work, made visible in the people around him, made visible in many of us in this audience. Not many people possess such multifaceted talent. The ideas, the vision, the actualization of that vision. Part of his success was the combination of his personality and beliefs. He had the passion, the drive, and the unflagging commitment and enthusiasm. And this is not to say he never got frustrated or despondent. Anyone who works in the Muslim community can tell you it's exhausting and frustrating work, and also rewarding and exciting too. But not everyone could stay the course like he could. Many would give up or take a break or work in isolation, but he kept at it. And I'm not sure if there was ever a period of time that he wasn't working on something for his community. Amongst his most passionate causes was that of youth education and visionary leadership for the South African Ummah. He knew our salvation lay in the youth, and he spent his life running youth and family camps. And I'm a product of those camps. And my kids are lucky to have attended those camps. And those camps were a world apart from the Islam we saw in our communities. It was revolutionary, and the benefit of those experiences and training I carry with me still today, and really it's irreplaceable. If anyone knew Mohammed, we knew that he was not one to rest, even on holiday. I remember when we went to India together, and we had 3 days to chill at a resort in south of India. Well, there was only so much of chilling that he could do. The children were all summoned to his room to discuss what was the plan for Muslim youth. What was the plan going forward? And I hope his passion and legacy in this regard will continue to serve the Muslim youth of today and generations to come, inshallah. I think he initiated our once a month family hikes, right? And the breakfast after was not so much his idea because he had to get back to work. But you know, that was the kind of thing he did. He got all of us up on a Sunday morning, hiking in a different place, because he wanted community, he wanted family, he wanted people to connect through healthy activities. And we had so many wonderful family meals that we shared together. And on many occasions that Islamic international guests were hosted at their home. And even the social get-togethers turned into something more, you know, with him around. Because he didn't stop thinking and planning for the Ummah. And those suppers where we could pray and socialize and incubate ideas, share our experiences, provided exposure to our children and to us to some of the best role models in Durban. His passion could be seen in his work and the things he brought to fruition, but also in his words and his speech. He believed in his ideas, and he was outspoken and convincing, And I identified with him on that, because he was very passionate in his arguments, and I can be very passionate about what I believe too. And he got that, right? And he got frustrated and angry sometimes with the establishment for the sake of Allah. And the one time I passionately agreed with him was when he said, burn the mosques. Of course he didn't mean burn the mosques, but that was how deep his commitment was to making sure that mosques were what they were meant to be. They weren't just, empty spaces that held 5-day prayers, but they were community spaces. And he was pretty patient with me when I pushed back a lot around a lot of issues that I was passionate about. And he really wanted mosques to play that role in the community, and in that he had an ally in me. And that's what his love for Islam and community was. It was a radical love, with the heat of indignation and frustration at the powerful elite that could do better. And we have him and the women and men of the organizations that work with him to thank for a version of Islam that we could identify with in a conservative town like Durban. He had a ready smile, broad and welcoming and down to earth. He engaged the kids with gentle teasing. He could be fun and light-hearted, and he always strove for excellence. I have just two distinct images of him that come to mind when I think of him. And one is speaking to an audience, expounding his ideas, and the other is smiling. He and Mariam were beautifully matched. He was energetic and expressed himself with vigor and impatient about action and getting things done. And Mariam is gentle and calm and softly spoken, but also gets things done. And they supported each other, and they shared their dreams and saw them come to fruition in school and their educational ventures. His frequent complaint was that new Muslims don't read, and reading and getting people to read was his joy and passion. He was in the printing business from the 70s, and seeking knowledge is what gave his activism meaning. And he was a lifelong seeker. And he has enabled so many others on that path through his publications. His bookshop, Beitul Hikmah, was his most recent project, and I'm glad that he got to see it, happen. The wisdom he leaves for us, his life, his work, his personal philosophy, it was a life well lived, and he has earned his Jannah, inshallah. He sees the day, he lived large, and now his work is done. But his legacy continues and lives on in the institutions, the people he influenced, the impact he has on the South African landscape, his community, his family. And I'm not sure we will fully appreciate the impact he had. It's not quantifiable. Inshallah, just like his sawab, unquantifiable, beyond means, inshallah.
Jazakallah khairan. So once again, try and contribute generously for the library. We are almost at the end of the program. The last speaker for tonight is Rashad Amra, who will speak on behalf of the Amra family.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل من لساني يفقهوا قولي كل نفس ذائقة الموت والذين جاهدوا فينا لنهدينهم سبلنا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We all taste death. I always thought that this ayah is like when you taste your own death, when the Sakaratul Maut is coming. And in the time of COVID, at least in 2021, lots of people were passing away. Lots of scholars passed away in our community, some of our personal teachers passed away, some of the senior ulama in this country, and then my father. And then so you taste death, you understand it as like your death is going, but you also taste death, you have a glimpse of death when other people around you are passing away, especially those who are close to you. And so we've all experienced a different form of death. So there's a lot of reflection on this. Many people have mentioned my father and mother are doers. I'm a talker, but so that's my doing. So first on behalf of the Mohamed Amra family, I would like to thank everybody for attending here, for your du'as, for your support. in the time, in a seismic moment in our life, both my father's passing, but also everything since then. Healing is a very long process. We never really the same. And the larger the person, the bigger the void. So you learn to cope with it. So Jazakallah khair, and especially for the Library Project. And we hope there's a hadith when a person dies, his deeds come to an end, except for Sadaqah Jariyah, so that's ongoing charity, beneficial knowledge, which we will benefit from. And I think the library encapsulates that, and righteous children, and I hope that we make that mark, but God will determine that. So, Jazakallah khair to the Islamic Forum, for everybody involved, and I'm not going to mention any names with the risk of omitting anybody. Our ajr is with Allah. It's not from people. Recognition from people, it's neither here nor there. It's all from Allah. And my father didn't like public praise. He didn't like these jamborees where you talk about people, because everything is from Allah, and the father is from Allah. But he had very high himma, that's aspiration, he had istiqamah. We asked for istiqamah in the Fatiha, and we say, رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا, and that's in Surah Baqarah quite early on. And I make the dua quite often, and then I lose steam, but like he seemed to have a very different level of istiqamah and tawfiq. That's Allah's enabling grace that makes things possible. And that's facilitated for you. So I've often wondered about this, and I think the day he passed away, or the day after, the week he passed away, one of his very close dear friends who's now based in Cape Town, Uncle Fuad Hendricks, said something quite, that stays with me. Your father chose Allah, and so Allah chose him. So you are chosen for Allah's work. The Anbiya were chosen, the Awliya were chosen, and we hope that we can be counted amongst those that are chosen. Because it's not our energy or our aspiration or our ego. Allah chooses people for His work. So the Palestinians are chosen, people who do Amal Salihat are chosen, those who preserve the Quran are chosen, and we hope that Allah chooses us, and that's a function of our ikhlas. So much has been said. Uncle Ahmed has covered very beautifully a lot. So I have some reflections I would like to share further to what I've already mentioned. So there's one ayah my father would read quite often in Salah when we read Jama'ah behind him, وَجَاهِدُوا فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ, to the end of the ayah. And jihad is something that's very important. And so he strove a lot against himself. You can't see that jihad, but against everything else. And so I think there's some scholars who believe that if there were to be a sixth pillar of the religion, it would be jihad. And so he always spoke about not getting caught up in the comfortable middle class Islam, where you do your prayers, you give your sadaqah, you fast in Ramadan, and you carry on living your life. So jihad was something that's quite central to him. There's another hadith, and I don't have the full text over here, but it was about the ghuraba, and we give good tidings to the strangers. And that's something he would mention very often. وَالْتُوبَى إِلَى الْغُرَبَى, meaning though Islam began as something strange and will return to be something strange at the end of times. So give glad tidings to the strangers. And he would mention this quite often, where to be a Muslim, encapsulating the religion as it's meant to be lived, not just a collection of rituals, is to be a strange person, and especially when you move towards the latter days. And that's something that he really emphasized, and I think we saw it encapsulated. At times where I would even say, why are you bothering with these people? They've turned down whatever you said so many times, they're really in it for the wrong reasons, but he still went out and he worked with people, despite having received the short end of the stick on many times. He would talk about ubudiyah quite often, the idea of servanthood. Like we are, subhanallah, the highest station is the station of being a servant. And he would talk about the idea of servanthood quite often. Would just emphasize the idea of the civilizational perspective. So from a very young age, I learned about Baghdad, I learned about Andalusia, I learned about the different highlights of Islamic civilization. And so it wasn't a parochial understanding of the world or parochial vision where, hey, we've done ABC, but it was big, it was very high himmah. And of course, as Auntie Anita mentioned right now, the idea of the mosque and the masjid being underutilized. So those were some of the points that kind of encapsulates his most recent memories we have of the last decade or so. He never stopped working. His himmah was on another level. His man 10 years, and finally one of the last tours it was Imam Ghazali was the idea of the melting of hearts, which is required in Islamic work. So this was something that he took quite often, and in his muraqabah and in his reading, this was quite important to him. And then again, the idea of reading and of a literate population, not a dumbed down population using WhatsApp forwards. And there's functional literacy and there's functional ignorance. And unfortunately, our society is functionally literate at best, and that's something that he was really frustrated by. And I think the library project is certainly a very befitting Sadaqah Jariyah for him. He never stopped. He really never stopped, and as I mentioned, even on holiday, but even in hospital. And he was, I think, 93 days, 94 days in Ahmed Al-Qadi hospital. But like in the initial days when he was more lucid, he was still, we've got a mind map, another has it of him, his plans for the Ummah and his vision on what's required. So it was really big thinking. It was global. When Khandaq is being dug and the sparks are there, and Prophet says, I see, the bangles or the bracelets of Kisros, of the Persian kings. And so the idea of like having a big vision, 30, 40, 50-year vision of what we really want. So with those words, I know time is not with us. I grew up, like most people, thinking, my father could do anything, and I never outgrew that. And that's maybe because, he was such a larger-than-life individual. Another reflection, I've never articulated this before, but like, I always thought the hero of my family was my mother, until my father's departure, and realized that like he made her so awesome. His presence amplified her. Not that she isn't awesome, but the idea is that amazing people make other people amazing. So there's no exaggeration of what's being said. We don't lionize and eulogize with half truths. Everything has been said is as it was. So Jazakallah khair, and we ask you to please remember him in your du'as, remember all of us, and just be a community that reads, that takes the first command seriously. There's some fantastic online book clubs as well. Sheikh Hamza used to have something called the First Command Book Club. You can join and read with other experts, and we hope to have some more frequent book clubs at the center, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. We'd like to hand over to Sheikh Ashraf.
Jazakallah, mashallah. Just thought of something. There are two types of workers, the reformers and the revolutionaries. Muhammad was a revolutionary as well as a reformer. And if you look at his life, that's what it was all about: changing society, improving society, uplifting society. And that's what he dedicated his life for. He gave up his career as a physiotherapist to do this on a full-time basis, while many of us were building up our careers. He was trying to change society. And that was the legacy that he left behind. We are the last part of our program. Sheikh Ashraf is going to make the dua. After the dua, we're going to perform Isha Salah, men downstairs, ladies on the balcony, and those of our sisters who want to perform the Salah in the library, please feel free to do so. And after that, obviously, we'll be serving supper. Men downstairs, Mohamed? Men downstairs?
Ladies inside the hall, men in the balcony.
Okay, the ladies inside the hall and men on the balcony. The last part of our program is a closing dua by Sheikh Ashraf. And in fact, Mohamed was instrumental in bringing Sheikh Ashraf to South Africa as an Arabic teacher. He was first housed at the Awami headquarters in Clear Road. He started off, a teacher in Arabic, and now obviously Sheikh Ashraf is involved with the Islah Foundation as well as the head of Awami in South Africa. And I think he also worked very closely with Mohammed, and he's going to make the closing dua tonight.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم واغفر لنا إنك أنت الغفور الرحيم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما واجعل تفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فينا ولا بيننا ولا حولنا شقيا أو محروما. اللهم إن هذا عبدك محمد عمرو ابن عبدك ابن أمتك كان يشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله. اللهم اغفر له وارحمه اللهم عافه واعف عنه، اللهم أكرم نزله، اللهم وسع مدخله، اللهم جاف الأرض عن جنبيه، اللهم نور له في قبره ووسع له فيه. اللهم إننا لا نمن عليك بما فعل، فالمنة منك سبحانك. اللهم إن كان محسنا فزد في حسناته، وإن كان مسيئا فتجاوز يا رب عن سيئاته. اللهم أبدله دارا خيرا من داره، وأهلا خيرا من أهله، وولدا خيرا من ولده، وزوجا خيرا من زوجه، وجيرانا خيرا من جيرانه، وأصدقاء خيرا من أصدقائه. اللهم اغسله من خطاياه بالماء والثلج والبرد، اللهم نقيه من خطاياه كما ينقى الثوب الأبيض من الدنس. اللهم باعد بينه وبين خطاياه كما باعدت بين المشرق والمغرب. اللهم اغفر لحينا وميتنا، شاهدنا وغائبنا، ذكرنا وأنثانا. اللهم من أحييته منا فأحيه على الإسلام، ومن توفيته منا فتوفاه على الإيمان. اللهم لا تحرمنا أجره ولا تفتنا بعده، واغفر لنا وله. اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها يا رب العالمين. انصر يا رب المسلمين المستضعفين في فلسطين، كن معهم ناصرا ومؤيدا ومعينا. اللهم سدد رميهم، اللهم اجبر كسرهم، اللهم ارحم ضعفهم، اللهم آمن روعاتهم، اللهم خفف روعاتهم. يا رب انتقم من اليهود الملاعين. اللهم أرنا فيهم عجائب قدرتك. اللهم أرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل. اللهم اجعلهم كعصف مأكول. اللهم أرنا فيهم عجائب قدرتك. اللهم إنهم لا يعجزونك. يا رب مكن لهذا الدين وافتح له قلوب الناس. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك، أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت، نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون، وسلام على المرسلين، الحمد لله رب العالمين.